Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Krenicki. Have you ever felt like you're non-stop studying and you should be remembering a lot and learning faster, but you're just not? So let's talk about that today. Let's learn how to learn medicine and anything else. Let's start with the main things I'm going to focus on today because I want to make this as much no nonsense as I can and get straight to the point. Spaced repetition and active recall. Okay? In the world of learning, active recall is the number one way to learn. It is the most efficient, it's the fastest, and you'll retain the most information in this way. Spaced repetition is a very good tool, but I think it matters what your timeline is for your studying and what the study material is. So active learning is essentially interacting with the study material itself. It is not rereading, highlighting, and hearing about material, right? It's not just in this digestion of material, okay? It is using information and the material that you digest, and you're expected with active learning to spit out that information and make it your own. Okay, so it's a two-way street. Examples of this, for example, could be doing question banks where you read through the question and you try to answer that question. If you get it right or if you get it wrong, you're using your own knowledge and applying it to the question to answer that question. Okay, and then understanding why you got it right or wrong, and then trying to apply that same knowledge to future questions. Another way is if you have a flashcard with a question and with a definite answer, and you, without looking at the flashcard, you have that question or idea, and then you expect yourself to put that information out and give the correct answer based on your own knowledge that you've already learned. Okay, that is active learning. That is a much more effective way to learn, retain, and be efficacious with your learning. Spaced repetition is very good with online learning tools like Anki, which is an online flashcard system that uses spaced repetition, where the idea is you have a bunch of flashcards and you rate them how good you think you know the knowledge, whether it's bad, good, easy, that kind of thing. And the algorithm in Anki will place that flashcard in a timeline where it believes that at this certain day, let's say a week or two, it is just the periphery of your memory that it believes to be true, and it will bring it back right at the end of that memory's life cycle to renew the idea and renew that neurological circuit, that thought process in your own mind. And that is good, and that is a good process, but I just don't think it is the best process for all things that we need to learn. So how do I learn? The way I learn is definitely active recall and spaced repetition, with a caveat. So if I'm learning for medicine, for example, I know what things I need to be learning and when, right? So I've got a definitive timeline. I know exactly the things I need to be learning, right? So let's say I have 200 or 300 flashcards, just as a random number, that I know I need to get done and repeat multiple times before, let's say in a week's time. So personally, I will take that flashcard that can do all of them as often as I believe I need to, from the beginning to the end in that order, right? So for me to be prepared for the exam in 1 week. I think, and that's using flashcards that I personally made, not ones that other people made. I'll talk about that as well. I think spaced repetition can be very good, but in my opinion, it's better for learning things like languages, where language is this natural entity that's flowing, that you use it on a moment's notice, and you have to just know it while you're using it. You cannot just think, oh, what was the question and the answer to this topic, or what was, it has to just come naturally. And for it to come naturally, I think spaced repetition it can be a very good tool in order to help your brain adopt that fluency over time. But that's assuming that you have an indefinite timeline. That's when spaced repetition is good, when you don't have that defined timeline. I don't think spaced repetition is good for defined timelines where we say we have a month or 6 months to prepare for an exam. I think we can be better. We can better study for those things by putting out concrete timelines when we're going to study certain material, when's the next set of material, and when's the next. So in terms of learning, retaining, and trying to repeat as little as possible, so we learn it once, we don't have to repeat it again almost at all, and if we do, it's a small amount of information in comparison to everything, again, to refresh our brains, right? In order for that to all happen, I think context is everything, and it's also the reason why I go for the flashcard system from beginning to end. When I make my flashcards, I make them based off of questions where I'll give the general context of the question in a very short format on one side of the flashcard, and then on the other side, I will make a very, again, short answer detailing what was correct and why it was correct. Okay, and if you do that for many flashcards, you start to remember the context of these flashcards and the order of these flashcards, and even if you're not sure, you can eventually go back in your mind and think to yourself, oh wait, I remember this context. Well, and I can you start to understand, re-understand what the context, what the answer was to that context, and why the meaning behind that context, which gives you the right answer. The wrong way to go about it is to think, here's the question, here's the answer, no context, and then eventually when you ask that question again after, let's say, thousands and thousands of questions, you blank, because you don't have that way of associating knowledge with certain things. There's nothing to attach that knowledge to. So context provides that, let's say, that pinboard where you can attach this knowledge to this context, and you know the answer because it's contextual, right? That's also how experiential learning works. We start to associate our knowledge, our own answers, based on context, based on the experience that gives it that context, right? So it's much the same. And so context, giving things context, experiential learning, it's very similar, and it's the most effective way to learn things naturally. And active learning, that active recall, gives us the best way to learn quickly, to make it efficacious, and to make sure we retain as much as we can without repeating work. So another way to learn yourself is to teach it to other people. Well, this is very good. You also have to be on a certain level where you understand the material enough to teach it to someone else. But once you've got the confidence enough to teach it to someone else, it will almost definitely be ingrained in your memory. Maybe not all of it after a long period of time, but definitely a very large portion of that knowledge will be ingrained into your system, and you just won't forget it. So I definitely think that visualization is another technique that we can use for our learning journey. And when doing these question banks for exams, what I like to do is I visualize that each question is actually a patient and the situation that's been presented to me, and I visualize that entire context, right? So you see a number of things that I'm doing. I'm visualizing it. There's the context, putting a lot of associations in my mind about what this context it would look like, what it would entail, and that gives it a lot of meaning in my kind of memory. Our memories, when we think back to a memory, when we think back to a memory, we think of a picture, right? We visualize something. If you visualize and you give context to your knowledge, it will be like looking at a memory. And that will give it the most meaning. That will make it the most easy to learn that topic. So visualization is something I do all the time. I've learned to do it over these many years, and it is one of the definite top ways to learn. Now I know there's the school of thought where mind mapping can be quite good, and I think it is. I think it's really good. but I think it's good for, let's say, one situation, or maybe a few at max. Because the idea of mind mapping is that you think of all of these kind of crazy pictures in a story based fashion, where, let's say, I start at the cheese factory and I go to ride a pony on to the Garden of Eden. And you know, so you're visualizing all of those few things, and they do work because I think they are context. But after you start applying this mind mapping technique to, let's say, thousands of situations, it's going to be, and at least from experience, it has been very difficult to try to visualize all of these made up mind maps, and I couldn't retain any of it, which is something different than kind of applying your already existing knowledge about contextual things, like me being a doctor, and I've seen some things before, I've had some real experience already, right? And then I apply that knowledge that I already have to new things that I'm trying to learn, and those new things are adding on to what I already know, right? I'm layering on things instead of creating a whole new picture, and then instead of that, and then applying that to thousands of things. That doesn't work in the long run, I don't think. I think it can be very effective if you've got a few situations to remember. I think it can be very effective, but in the long scheme of things, it's not going to really work. I think it should definitely be said that you need to make sure that the environment you're learning in is optimized for you. If you're easy to distract, make sure you minimize distractions. If you're a morning person, make sure you're in the morning, you've got that morning light if you can. If it's too early even for that because it's still dark, make sure that you're awake enough to the point where you're in your kind of zone. Right, so if that's coffee, if that's anything else that you use, make sure you know yourself enough to be able to place yourself in that optimum mind zone in order to make sure that you can work through the tasks that you have and keep going, right? Because it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't look into enough is prioritizing rest and recovery in your work and study life. So it's very easy to say, I'm going to go do 12 hours study and then repeat. I eat, sleep, repeat, right? And sure, you can do that initially, but it won't work in the long run. It won't work in the long run. Everyone we are organic beings that even robots need time to rest and reset, recharge. Human beings are nothing different. We need to sleep. So it's the same idea here. When you study for long periods of time, that doesn't mean they're good hours. That doesn't mean they're efficacious hours. You can do more in a single hour than you can in a whole day of studying if you're doing it right. You can be faster, you can be more efficacious, and you can retain things for much longer if you do things the right way in less time in comparison to if you're doing everything wrong even over a half day, a whole day. It doesn't matter. The time is not the factor. It's all the factors that you put into that time that matter. So it does need to be said. Medical school, there's a saying that goes, when you go to medical school, it's like drinking water from a fire hydrant. Now that is very true. And even though it can be like that, it's important to know that you can still manage to chunk that information into digestible sizes if you allot your time correctly and you have the right study techniques and you're efficient with your time. That is all possible. And it doesn't change after medical school or any other school. You can still use those techniques for anything. And if you do it that way, your life will be very easy in comparison to just studying all the time, not having time for anything else. Life is not like that. And you also have a responsibility to yourself to be able to do all the things that you want in life by not spending all of your time studying. And you're only going to do that if you've got the time for it. So you got to make sure you double down on these techniques to make sure that you're studying right and you can enjoy life. at the same time, because life is not just about studying. And I'll close by sharing a final thought. Absolutely, absolutely make sure to avoid passive learning. These are things like rereading notes or highlighting things. Okay? This is just you looking at a page and thinking that you've downloaded the information, but when you get tested on it, you get the answer wrong. That's passive learning. Most of the time, it's been shown that people are not able to effectively learn in that way. So please don't go against the current. Don't use that method. It's very often that people do exactly that, and it's just not effective. Active learning is what you want to focus on. Flashcards, making sure they're good flashcards, making sure that you're repeating the information and that's coming from you, not at you. And then if you can build a routine around all of these tips to maximize your learning experience, you'll be happier, you'll be more knowledgeable, you'll succeed, and there might even be a chance that you'll be wealthy, because you can apply this to everything. There's a lot of knowledge in this video, there's a lot of tips. I think it's a lot to digest, especially because a lot of these things I know not everyone does in terms of their learning. So what's the best way to approach trying to implement these strategies is to go little by little, week by week, trying to add one technique, one way of learning and retaining this information at a time. See what works for you, see what doesn't, see what you can optimize, see what you can flip around, and then succeed as hard as you can. I'll see you guys next time. If you liked the video, if you liked the content, please subscribe, give a like, comment, let me know what your thoughts are. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.